Welcome to Browning-Chapman New Hire Safety Orientation. Your attendance today will give you insight and answer questions about the company safety policies and procedures put into place to protect your well-being during the course of work. This training cannot be exhaustive for every scenario you will face. However, your employee safety manual, direct supervisors, safety representatives, and ongoing safety training will help to fill gaps and give you the knowledge necessary to remain safe. We are going to cover quite a bit of material today, so please be prepared to listen and take notes for your reference. We will begin with company policies and procedures, followed by specific policies for tool use, fall protection, and other necessary safety provisions. At the end of new hires safety training, you should understand and be able to adhere to all employee safety responsibilities, know our accident and injury reporting procedures and where to find the correct reporting forms, comply with our drug and alcohol policy, understand disciplinary procedures and corrective actions, know the correct personal protective equipment, or PPE, required during work, and have a firm understanding and knowledge base of hand and power tool safety, fall protection provisions, including aerial lifts, scaffolds, and ladders, and electrical safety. You will also be reminded of general vehicle safety tips and understand the hazard communication standard. We'll begin with an overview of your management's commitment to safety, as well as expectations and responsibilities for all employees. While working for Browning-Chapman, you will encounter a variety of tasks that will require your commitment and responsibility to safety. In order to protect yourself and your colleagues, adherence to company safety policies and procedures is of the utmost importance and is a company expectation. Working in the field will present a variety of conditions where you will be expected to behave safely. For example, you may work at elevated heights, such as when working on suspended scaffolds or in aerial lifts. For these situations, your attention to and correct implementation of fall protection plans is required. You may also complete tasks that require chemicals and powered tools that may necessitate additional forms of personal protective equipment. Regardless of the challenge presented, you are expected to be knowledgeable in all company safety procedures and adhere to all applicable policies and procedures. Our commitment to safety is reflected in everything that we do. We believe that there is no job so important that we cannot take the time to do it safely. Our corporate safety policy is a good summarization of our commitment and beliefs surrounding safe work practices. Our corporate safety policy is to provide a safe workplace that is free from hazards that may otherwise result in injuries to our personnel. We will implement protective measures to control for the potential to injury and will communicate all expected hazards to our team prior to beginning work. You can find the anticipated hazards and appropriate controls outlined in your project's job hazard analysis. We also understand that the safety and health of our personnel is a team effort that requires commitment from both management and field employees. It is our expectation that all control measures put into place for your safety are adhered to at all times. We will not expose our personnel to excessive risk, and every employee has the responsibility to communicate uncontrolled safety issues to supervisors. Your management team will always provide adequate training, engineering controls, and personal protective equipment to keep you safe. This new hire orientation is the first step in many to ensure you have the practical knowledge necessary to remain safe. Safety at Browning-Chapman is a company-wide expectation that starts at the top. Your management team will take several measures to ensure your personal safety. These measures include developing and implementing policies that will keep all personnel safe at our project sites, providing the appropriate PPE, tools, and materials for the job, communicating with all employees to address hazards that are brought to our attention, investigating all accidents and near misses to prevent future occurrence, and we will comply and in some areas exceed OSHA standards for all safety and health policies. These measures are put into place for one reason: to ensure that all of our personnel work in a safe and healthy environment. To help us improve and ensure we're providing a safe place to work, we depend upon you and ask that you comply with all employee safety responsibilities. The safety responsibilities that we ask you to adhere to include the following: understand all company safety policies and procedures. If you're unsure how to perform a task safely, do not proceed until you have clarity on the safe way to perform the work. Perform all duties in a safe manner and report any unsafe acts or conditions to a supervisor immediately. Reporting unsafe acts and conditions allows us to be proactive and to correct issues before they result in injury. You're also expected to wear all necessary personal protective equipment required for the task and participate in all safety training sessions, including toolbox talks and corporate safety meetings. Finally, never perform any task for which you haven't been trained, and communicate all safety suggestions to a supervisor, foreman, or to the safety director immediately. Your feedback is paramount in ensuring we have provided controls for all possible safety hazards. The next topic we will discuss is our safety violation and disciplinary policy. Although we like to use mistakes as teaching moments to improve your knowledge, there may be scenarios wherein we have to employ disciplinary action to assist with improvement. The Browning-Chapman Safety Violation and Disciplinary Action Policy has been implemented and is used to promote compliance with company-issued safety requirements and procedures. In the following slides, we will review examples of violations and explain the policy in further detail. Any safety violation and disciplinary action notices issued may reference the Corporate Safety Manual, Site-Specific Safety Plan, and/or the Employee's Safety Handbook. The Browning-Chapman Safety Violation and Disciplinary Action Policy has been designed as a progressive disciplinary policy. The goal of this policy is to educate employees rather than punish them. With that being the goal, the policy is built to be progressively disciplinary for repeated or continued safety violations. Examples of progressive discipline are listed below, however, are subject to a case-by-case scenario. First minor violation, verbal warning and/or documented written warning. Second minor violation, documented written warning and/or one-day suspension without pay. First major violation, one-day suspension without pay. Second major violation, 2-day suspension without pay and management review of violations with consideration for termination. Third or severe violation, minimum 2-day suspension without pay, management review of violations, and grounds for termination. The majority of safety violations will result in written warnings and escalate depending upon the frequency of violations of the same type. Our disciplinary procedures are not intended to punish, but to correct behavior before it results in severe injury. Violations that result in written warnings include minor safety violations that do not have the potential to cause injury or death, project-specific safety violations that will not cause injury or death, and violations that do not fall under the mandatory compliance provisions. Mandatory compliance provisions are presented on the following slide and are those that have immediate potential to cause serious harm. Mandatory compliance provisions include fall protection violations, electrical safety violations, struck by violations, and caught between violations. Any violation of this type will result in immediate removal from the job for the remainder of the day and without pay. Repeated violations will result in more severe action. For a second offense, you will receive a written warning and be suspended from work for the remainder of the day as well as the following day. And a third offense of the same type can result in immediate termination. These provisions are intended to make you aware of the seriousness of these types of violations. We do not want to implement disciplinary action of this severity, and you will be given ample education and warning to ensure we do not have to escalate disciplinary action to this level. To finish our corporate safety policies, and before we move into the practical field safety knowledge, we will cover accident and injury reporting procedures and substance abuse procedures. It is critically important that we are kept informed for all accidents, incidents, and injuries that occur at our projects. A proper reporting culture helps us identify areas for improvement and allows us to provide you proper care if an accident occurs. As soon as an accident occurs and after you've provided immediate assistance to any injured workers, you're asked to contact your foreman or project manager immediately. Your foreman will contact the appropriate incident coordinator who will point you to the appropriate occupational health facility for treatment if necessary. There should never be a circumstance when you go to an occupational health without first coordinating with your project manager or foreman. Only if an injury is truly severe should 911 be dialed. Otherwise, provide general first aid utilizing the kit provided in your equipment box. After the incident occurs, fill out the accident report form. This form is found in the Corporate Safety Manual and may be provided to you by the incident coordinator. This form has all of the information and questions that will need answered. This form will have space for witness statements as well, so we can understand the full extent of the situation. Browning Chapman is committed to continuous safety improvement. As a result, we take the time to investigate all accidents to help us learn from them. You may be asked to assist with an accident investigation, and your cooperation is necessary for a thorough review. We hope to minimize incidents that occur, but we understand that accidents can happen. Our first priority is the proper care of our workers, which makes this process of paramount importance. Browning Chapman has a drug and alcohol policy that is very clear. At no time will any employee be allowed to work under the influence of drugs and/or alcohol. Coming to work impaired can cause you to be unsafe and harm yourself, co-workers, or other personnel in the area. If you're suspected to be under the influence of drugs, you will be required to take a drug and alcohol test for reasonable suspicion. At Browning Chapman, you will be required to undergo pre-employment drug screenings as well as annual drug screening and random drug screenings. All drug screenings include the following substances: amphetamines such as MDMA, cocaine, PCP, opiates, THC, and alcohol. Prescription drugs that may cause impairment are also not allowed to be used during the course of work duties. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, is equipment designed to protect you from a variety of hazards. PPE may include hard hats, safety glasses, gloves, and work boots. At Browning Chapman, we will perform a job hazard analysis to determine site-specific personal protective equipment depending on the anticipated hazards. The minimum personal protective equipment at Browning Chapman includes leather work boots, long pants, shirts with a minimum of a 4-inch sleeve, and safety glasses. Some PPE is required, but only during specific tasks. The JHA or supervisor will clearly designate the required PPE for the job. Examples of this type of equipment includes hearing protection, respirators, hard hats, and hand and arm protection. If you're working in an area that requires you to raise your voice to communicate with coworkers, hearing protection should be used. If you're working with substances that are hazardous to inhale, a respirator will be utilized. However, you must be trained on the proper use of respirators prior to this being allowed. Additionally, if there are overhead hazards, the use of a hard hat is required. All PPE will be distributed to you with the exception of work boots. You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining your own pair of work boots at Browning Chapman. Make sure you take good care of all PPE by storing it away from materials in a clean, dry place. Personal protective equipment can offer great protection, but attention to and proper inspection of hand and power tools is extremely important as well. It's important that you respect and utilize hand and power tools the correct way. In order to stay safe, please remember to maintain all hand and power tools in proper working condition. Hand and power tools that are neglected have an increased risk of causing injury. Use the right tool for the job. Never attempt to use flathead screwdrivers, for example, as chisels. Tools are designed for specific applications. If you are unsure of the proper tool, ask your supervisor for clarification. Always inspect tools prior to use. If the tool appears to be inadequately maintained, tag that tool and remove it from use until it has been adequately serviced. Instead, use a tool that's in proper working condition. And finally, for any tools that have guarding, ensure that it is equipped prior to use. Hand tools can be hazardous to operate in certain circumstances. Typically, hazards are caused due to misuse and improper maintenance. Never utilize hand tools when wrenches have jaws that are sprung, impact tools such as chisels and wedges when the heads have mushroomed, tools have loose, cracked, or splintered handles, or when tools have taped handles. Tape handles are usually indicative of hiding cracks. Power tools can also be dangerous when handled or maintained improperly. Let's discuss power tools precautions and safety guidelines. Disconnect tools when not in use, before servicing and cleaning, and when changing accessories. Secure work with clamps or a vise, freeing both hands to operate the tool. Don't hold the switch button while carrying a plugged-in tool. Keep tools sharp and clean. Consider what you wear. Loose clothing and jewelry can get caught in moving parts. Remove damaged electric tools and tag them. Do not use. Working at elevations is a hazard that cannot be ignored. In 2010, of all 751 construction-related fatalities, 35% of those occurred from falls at height. That's approximately 263 fall-related deaths in only one calendar year. Gravity is always present, so we will ensure we provide the proper protection to prevent falls from occurring. OSHA Standard 1926 Subpart M is the fall protection section of the construction standard. OSHA requires that a fall protection system is in place whenever working at elevations greater than 6 feet. At Browning Chapman, you will likely be working at elevation on scaffolds or in aerial lifts. We will go into greater detail on both scaffolds and aerial lifts in the next few slides. However, the general principles include the following. Scaffolds must only be erected under supervisions of a competent person and must include guardrails consisting of a top rail, mid-rail, and toe boards. If a scaffold has unprotected edges where a guardrail is not present, a personal fall arrest system must be utilized if the scaffold is above 10 feet high. Aerial lifts also have guardrails for fall protection, but a personal fall arrest system, including full body harness and lanyards, must be worn at all times. There are no exceptions to operating an aerial lift without the use of a personal fall arrest system at Browning Chapman. Holes are defined by OSHA as a gap or void 2 or more inches in its least dimension in a floor, roof, or other walking or working surface. An example of a hole would be a section in the concrete deck of a parking garage which has been fully or partially chipped away. Holes or depreciations in floors or other walking or working surfaces shall be covered with covers which meet the below criteria. Even when a hole or floor depreciation does not meet the exact 2-inch measurement, they should be covered as required in this standard to prevent slips, trips, falls, or other injuries from stepping in such areas. Hole covers shall be capable of supporting at least twice the maximum load expected to cross over the cover. Shall be secured when installed to prevent displacement. For floor holes, a wood plank placed perpendicular to the hole edges can be placed on the underside of the cover to prevent movement. Shall be marked with the word hole or cover in fluorescent marking. Personal fall arrest systems consist of 3 primary components that are listed and explained below. 1. Personal fall arrest harness. This is a full body harness which is secured to both legs and over the shoulders. Body belts are not permitted. 2. Lanyard, standard or retractable. This is typically a 6-foot lanyard with a 3.5-foot shock-absorbing section. Retractable lanyards meet compliance but are classified as fall restraint rather than fall arrest. 3. Anchor point. All anchor points shall be capable of withstanding 5,000 pounds of force. Fall arrest system components shall be inspected by the user daily prior to use, after any incident or possible damage, and removed from service if they are part of a fall of any kind. Aerial lifts, either with articulating booms or scissor lifts, are an essential machine to help us complete our projects. Aerial lifts are intended to bring the operator or worker closer to the area of work, most often at heights. In order to use an aerial lift at Browning Chapman, you must be adequately trained and pass a skills assessment. If you have not been trained, you will not be able to use an aerial lift. There are no exceptions to this rule. Both scissor lifts and articulating boom lifts will require you to wear a full body harness and a rip stitch lanyard with a shock absorber. This is for your protection in the unlikely event that a fall occurs. You may be tempted to secure your lanyard to the guardrail in the aerial lift, but this is not allowed. Only secure lanyards to anchorage points in the lift that are specifically designed to arrest a fall. These are often designated with signage indicating it is an approved anchorage point. You will often find anchorage points near the control box for the lift. Prior to using an aerial lift, a pre-operational inspection must be completed. The pre-operation inspection may be documented and require you to check various parts of the lift, including tires for inflation or damage, all hoses for leaks, the lower controls to ensure they're operational, backup alarms if equipped, the load chart, and the operator's manual. You may need to check additional components of the lift that will be designated on the inspection form. You must also inspect your harness and lanyard prior to use. Please ensure that the harness webbing is free from damage or tears, the D-ring is not cracked or deformed, and that it fits correctly. The lanyard should be inspected for similar damage. Forming an inverted U with the webbing can help identify any problems with your personal fall arrest equipment. Aerial lifts require common sense and smooth operation. Do not horseplay or stunt drive in any aerial lifts. Scaffolds also pose a potential safety hazard, and you must adhere to specific rules outlining scaffold use. 100% tie-off is required utilizing a personal fall arrest system harness and retractable lanyard, or yo-yo style lanyard. Daily inspections must be conducted and documented. When working in low-lying ceiling areas such as parking garages, employees are to remove the control module and operate the lift from a safe distance on the ground level while walking alongside the lift. Scaffold safety is of paramount importance due to the high elevations and consequences associated with falling from heights. Scaffolds are temporary, elevated work platforms that allow you to reach heights greater than you otherwise may be able to. Scaffolds are great as they allow you a larger working space than a stepladder or lift platform. At Browning Chapman, you will encounter fixed scaffolds, typically constructed of poles, legs, frames, and outriggers, and Perry or mobile scaffolds. Mobile scaffolds are smaller in height than fixed scaffolds and provide an easy way to move to different locations. On most scaffolds, you will be protected from falls by compliant guardrails. Let's learn more about scaffold guardrails on the following slide. Guardrails on scaffolds are typically required to be installed upon all open sides and ends of platforms. There is, however, an exception if the front edge is within 14 inches of the face of the work. In this scenario, it's unlikely that a fall would occur. When guardrails are used, the top rail must be between 39 and 45 inches, with the mid-rail halfway between the surface and top rail. Toe boards are required and must be at least 4 inches high to prevent potential falling debris. Each guardrail must also be compliant with the minimum amount of weight it can support. Top rails must be able to withstand 200 pounds of force, mid-rails must withstand 150 pounds of force, and toe boards must be able to withstand 50 pounds of force. Planking is also a concern with scaffolds and must be installed correctly. Scaffolds must be fully planked or decked with no more than 1-inch gaps. All planking must be scaffold grade wood and capable of withstanding its weight and 4 times the maximum load. In order to maintain compliance, scaffold planks must also be at least 18 inches wide. If guardrails are not in place and you're working on a scaffold at an elevation greater than 10 feet, a full body harness with lanyards secured to an anchorage point must be utilized. Anchorage points must be able to withstand 5,000 pounds of arresting force and cannot be a loose structure, such as conduit. If you're unsure, ask your supervisor to ensure you use an approved anchorage point. Use of suspended scaffolds requires additional awareness training. See your foreman if you're expected to work on suspended scaffolds and have yet to be trained. Along with scaffolds and lifts, ladders will be an integral part of completing work at Browning Chapman. Ladders allow us to work at or access elevated areas. However, there are many factors you must keep in mind when working with ladders. First and foremost, whenever you use a ladder, you must inspect it first. Check over the ladder to ensure there are no cracks or missing rungs. If you're utilizing a step ladder, you will want to ensure the cross bracing is intact and free from damage. Do not use a painted wooden ladder, as there is a chance that cracks are hidden beneath the paint coat. If you're using a metal ladder, ensure it is not bent. Once you've verified the ladder is free from damage, you can set up the ladder for use. Keep these details in mind for ladder setup. Portable extension ladders must be set up 1 foot away from the structure for every 4 feet of rise. This 4-to-1 rule will help keep the ladder level and maximize its structural integrity. Extension ladders must be on level ground and, if it's a loose surface, such as dirt, extend the ladder feet and stick them into the ground. If you're utilizing the ladder to access an upper landing, the rungs must extend 3 feet above the landing and the ladder must be secured to the structure. Step ladders are only for use on level ground and must be fully opened prior to use. The cross bracing must be in place and free from damage. After viewing this slide, you should be able to inspect and set up a ladder correctly. Now we will talk about the safety rules regarding ladder use. When working on ladders, it's essential to reduce falls by adhering to specific safety principles. On ladders, there is no tie-off, so it's important to maintain balance and a firm footing and grip to prevent falls. When working on ladders at Browning Chapman, you are required to adhere to these safety guidelines. Never carry loads while ascending or descending extension ladders or step ladders. Instead, either hoist material to the work location or have a coworker hand you tools if you're working on step ladders. Always grasp ladder rungs, not side rails, while you climb on or off ladders. This will help ensure adequate grip. Always face the ladder when ascending and descending so you don't fall forwards away from the ladder. Never stand on the top 2 steps of a stepladder. This is dangerous as it increases the likelihood of tipovers and falls. The images on the screen show several safety violations, including carrying material, grasping side rails, and utilizing the top steps of a stepladder. All of these behaviors are prohibited at Browning Chapman and must be avoided at all times. Lastly, if using an extension ladder to access upper landings, ensure it's tied off and extends the minimum 3 feet above the landing. And be smart. It's easy to become complacent with ladder safety hazards, so never put yourself at risk of injury or worse. Adherence to electrical safety rules is also extremely important to prevent severe injuries, including electrical shock. Risks are increased at construction sites because many jobs involve electric power tools from temporary sources of power. Electricity has long been recognized as a serious workplace hazard, exposing employees to electric shock, electrocution, burns, fires, and explosions. In 1999, for example, 278 workers died from electrocutions at work, accounting for almost 5% of all on-the-job fatalities. What makes these statistics more tragic is that most of these fatalities could have been easily avoided. Keep in mind, very little electricity is needed to stop the heart. In fact, only 75 milliamperes can cause the heart to beat ineffectively or to completely stop. A small power drill uses about 30 times as much electricity. There is also a risk of causing fires to the area surrounding work if proper electrical protocols are not followed. The following electrical safety requirements are required to maintain a safe workplace. First and foremost, ensure you're using the correct cord. All extension cords should be of the 3-wire type and designed for hard or extra hard use. You can locate the usage designation on the cord's outer jacket. Cords designed for hard use will either be type S, ST, SO, STO, SJ, SJT, or SJTO. All cords, including extension cords and power tool cords, must be inspected daily prior to use. If there is any damage to the cord's outer jacket, exposed wiring, or missing prongs, tag out the tool or cord and do not use until it's repaired. At the source of power, whether a generator or internal building outlet, a ground fault circuit interrupter is required by OSHA. A ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI, will stop all power if a change in voltage is detected. At Browning Chapman, we will rarely work in the vicinity of overhead lines. However, if you do find overhead power lines close to the work area, stay at least 20 feet away and never make contact with any lines, even if insulated. Lockout-tagout, or LOTO, is a system designed to control hazardous energy of equipment or tools in the workplace during maintenance or repairs. Energy exists in two forms, active and stored. Active energy is energy which is continuously supplied, such as a power tool which is plugged into an outlet. Stored, or residual energy, is energy left over when the power source is disconnected, such as air in a pneumatic chipping hammer line. The purpose of the Browning Chapman LOTO program is to protect all employees from hazardous energy when performing basic tasks such as power tool repair or maintenance. An example of LOTO would be locking and tagging out a pneumatic chipping hammer when you are replacing the chipping bit. The tool should be disconnected from the air supply line, the connection shall be secured to prevent unauthorized energization, all residual energy shall be bled, and then repair or maintenance is able to be performed. Employees are classified into two classifications, affected and authorized. Affected employees are all Browning Chapman employees who may be affected by an LOTO scenario. Authorized employees are foremen or other members of supervision which are authorized to perform LOTO tasks. Only authorized personnel are permitted to place a lock and tag. Who can remove a lock or tag? Only the person who placed the lock or tag is permitted to remove the attachment. If the person is unavailable, they shall be contacted for permission. If this is unsuccessful, the safety director shall be contacted for further direction. The lockout-tagout procedure includes the following 6 basic steps. Number 1, preparation. Prepare for the shutdown and identify affected employees as well as energy sources. Number 2, shutdown. Turn off or otherwise shut down the equipment. Number 3, isolation. Disconnect and secure all energy activation connections. Number 4, lockout-tagout. Apply the lock and tag to the equipment as well as all its energy connections. Number 5, stored energy check. Disperse any residual energy. Number 6, isolation verification. Attempt to operate the tool or equipment. Hazard communication is a program in which to disseminate information on chemicals brought into the workplace and which you may work with. The standard is typically known as the Right to Know standard. The objective of hazard communication is to ensure that the hazards of all chemicals produced or imported are evaluated, and that information concerning their hazards is provided to employers and employees. Your employer must provide, upon request, the written hazard communication program and safety data sheets that provide insight into the specific health hazards of all materials. Safety data sheets will be available in the database at the shop and with the foreman in the job folder. Get with your job foreman to determine the location of your safety data sheets. Your responsibility with this program is to label all containers when you've moved chemicals from the manufacturer's container to a smaller container. Examples might be when you move cleaners from a larger bottle to a spray bottle. In this scenario, the container must have a label so everyone can identify its contents. You're also asked to notify your foreman if labels are no longer legible. We will have a replacement label ordered to ensure everyone is aware of the material inside the container. HazCom is your right to know. The purpose of this program is to inform the user about the chemical they are using. The HazCom will inform the user of any side effects associated with the chemical and any necessary personal protective equipment while handling the chemical. Employee responsibilities include ensuring that all secondary containers are properly labeled and replacing any labels that may become damaged or are no longer legible during use of the chemical. Safety data sheets are documents provided by the manufacturer of all materials which relay specific safety information about the materials you are handling, including but not limited to PPE requirements, firefighting and protective measures, handling requirements, material qualities, specific health or other safety hazards associated with the material, and much more information. Safety data sheets are provided on each job site at the job box or with the site foreman. If physical copies are unavailable, the SDS may be obtained online by searching, quote, product name, SDS, end quote, on any major internet search engine. Respirable crystalline silica dust is a dangerous substance workers are exposed to in the workplace as a result of disturbing materials containing silica, such as concrete or certain drywalls. This silica dust has harmful health effects on those who are exposed to it without protection. Exposures to this dust can cause a condition known as silicosis, which is an irreversible, sometimes fatal lung disease. An average of 162 deaths per year are traced back as a result of exposure to silica. Silica can also cause lung cancer and other autoimmune diseases. For these reasons, it is important that you, the employee, take serious the plan Browning-Chapman has in place to protect you and your health. For each job site you work on, a site-specific silica safety plan will be completed by the job supervisor. The supervisor will then review it with all employees on site who will sign the plan acknowledging their understanding of the plan and controls required. If at any time you have any questions, please relay those to your foreman or the Browning-Chapman Safety Director. It is imperative that you understand and follow all controls outlined in the site silica safety plan and utilize proper PPE for the task, including but not limited to safety glasses, hard hat, safety boots, gloves, and adequate respiratory protection. Required personal protective equipment will be available to you as outlined in the company's safety program and respiratory protection program. Browning-Chapman will coordinate required medical testing and fit testing for each respirator you are required to utilize here at Browning-Chapman. N95 dust masks are to be used for all tasks and scenarios where employees may be exposed to airborne respirable crystalline silica dust. Task examples include but are not limited to jackhammering, grinding, and mixing of silica-containing materials. N95 respirators are limited in use and protection. The N in N95 means the respirator is not resistant to oil. The 95 in N95 means the respirator filters out 95% of airborne particles. The respirator is not protective against harmful vapors or other airborne matter which are not physical particles. N95 dust masks are to be utilized in conjunction with control measures listed in the company's written silica exposure control plan and site-specific silica exposure control plans. For questions regarding whether an N95 dust mask is required, visit the above-mentioned documents or review Table 1 from OSHA 29 CFR 1926.1153 Safety Standard. OSHA defines a confined space as a space that is 1. Large enough and so configured that an employee can bodily enter and perform assigned work. 2. Has limited or restricted means for entry or exit, for example, tanks, tankers, silos, storage bin, vaults, and pits. And 3. Is not designated for continuous employee occupancy. Permit required confined space. This is a space that meets all of the above criteria and has one or more of the below hazards. 1. A substance that has the ability to engulf or asphyxiate the entrant. 2. A potentially hazardous atmosphere. 3. Spaces with inwardly converging walls within the space or a floor that slopes downward, tapering to a small cross-section. Or 4. Contains any other serious safety or health hazard. Non-permit required confined space. This is a space that meets the above 3 confined space criteria, but does not consist of at least one of the above mentioned hazards. General vehicle safety. Passengers and operators must always wear seatbelts in vehicles. Drivers must have a current and valid operator's license. Drivers must comply with all federal, state, and local traffic regulations. Browning-Chapman has an explicit hands-free policy. At no time are drivers permitted to operate any handheld device such as a cell phone, tablet, or other device while behind the wheel. Occupants must always be seated and maintain arms and legs within the vehicle. Shut off vehicles when left unattended with gears and brakes set. Ignition keys should not be left in an unattended vehicle. Employees are responsible for traffic violations and citations in company vehicles or personally owned vehicles. Driving company vehicles for personal reasons is prohibited unless you have received express consent from a member of management. Practice defensive driving. If driving beyond 150 air miles in a Department of Transportation vehicle, you are required to maintain a logbook and carry a Department of Transportation medical card. Additional training over DOT requirements and hours of service limits is required prior to operating a DOT vehicle. Check with your supervisor to ensure you have an adequate knowledge base prior to operating DOT vehicles. Lastly, we will discuss our hazard communication program. The following policies will be reviewed in the next few slides, but the specifics of each will be brief. Please contact the Safety Director or the HR Department for more information about each policy if you have unanswered questions. We will review the Corporate Safety Manual, Employee Safety Handbook, Equipment Safety Training, Site-Specific Safety Plans, Site-Specific Silica Exposure Control Plan. The Corporate Safety Manual includes multiple chapters containing OSHA-related compliance documents which pertain to our company. The purpose of the Browning-Chapman Corporate Safety Manual is to provide company management and employees a roadmap for maintaining a safe and healthy work environment in compliance with OSHA standards. The Corporate Safety Manual is referenced by members of management at various times and is available to all employees electronically upon request. Please contact the HR Department for instructions on obtaining a copy of the Corporate Safety Manual. The Employee Safety Handbook is meant to be used as a general guide to safe policies and procedures set forth by company management and in regards to OSHA standards and site-specific safety requirements. The purpose of the Employee Safety Handbook is to provide a condensed version of the Corporate Safety Manual to all employees which communicates safety requirements of the company and employee expectations. A copy of this handbook will be provided to you upon completion of this new hire safety orientation and is additionally available upon request to the HR department. It is the company's expectation that all employees will review this handbook, familiarize themselves with the expectations outlined in this handbook, maintain a copy of the handbook, and reference the document when questions or concerns regarding workplace safety arise. Browning-Chapman employees may be required to operate various types of equipment. Equipment examples include, but are not limited to, mobile elevated work platforms, including aerial lifts and scissor lifts, swing stage scaffolding, powered industrial trucks, which include forklifts, and lulls. Browning-Chapman employees are not permitted to operate equipment without proper training and hands-on evaluation. Additionally, training will be conducted on a renewal frequency for any employee deemed expired per OSHA guidelines. Retraining may be performed at the discretion of management at any time for any reason and without notice. Employees and pedestrians in areas where equipment is being operated must remain diligent and aware of surroundings at all times. Site-specific safety plans are critical to the pre-planning of specific and potential hazards which may be present on a job site. While these plans may be written by members of management, it is up to you to communicate to your direct supervisor any items which may not be covered in the plan. The purpose of the site-specific safety plan is to provide a safety plan which is specific to each project with safety requirements and guidelines that are specific to tasks completed as part of that project. Information within the SSSP include PPE requirements, emergency action plans, task-specific safety requirements, general site safety requirements, and a basic outline of Browning-Chapman safety policy for all employees and contractors. It is the company's expectation that all employees will familiarize themselves with the contents of each site-specific safety plan for each project which they perform work. It is also the expectation that management will uphold the safety requirements mentioned in the site-specific safety plan. Any safety violation and disciplinary action notices issued may reference the site-specific safety plan and/or the Employee Safety Handbook. Respirable crystalline silica is a common hazard employees of Browning-Chapman have exposure to. Additional training may be performed for employees with varying levels of exposures to silica. The purpose of the site-specific silica exposure control plan is to identify and document tasks to be completed as part of the job, which create an employee exposure to the silica dust. Information within the site-specific silica exposure control plan includes specific tasks completed by Chapman and the controls for such tasks as outlined in OSHA 29 CFR 1926.1153 Table 1. Each employee is expected to review this plan with their job site foreman and familiarize themselves with the control measures to be used. Supervisors and employees should also work together to ensure employee competency in rigging dust control attachments or systems. Thank you for your attendance and participation during New Hire Safety Orientation. If you have questions or would like to request a site audit or specific safety training session, please contact Safety Resources using the contact information on your screen. At this time, you will sign the New Hire Safety Orientation Acknowledgement and take a quiz to ensure retention of the information contained in this training.